Okay, chapter 3.5. Right? In chapter 3.5, we're going to learn 4 different things, okay? But they're all related. So here's the first thing that we're going to talk about, is how to write the equation of a line. Okay? And some of this should be review from algebra. Right? So that's what we're going to start with, is finding out how to write the equation of a line. So here would be an example of a problem that you'd have. You'd have 2 points, let's say points A and B, and point A is at 2, 4, and point B is at, let's say, 10, 6. Okay? Alright, and we want to write the equation of the line that goes through these 2 points, A and B. Alright? So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to have to find the slope. Right? Find the slope. Now we talked about slope last time in 3.4, and we said that slope, okay, slope is the rise over the run, okay? And we also say that it is the change in y over the change in x. Right? So, in order to find the slope, we talked about how to find it. We had a formula, and our formula was y1 minus y2 over x1 minus x2. Okay? Or you could say y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. It doesn't matter either way. All right? But we're going to find the slope of the line that goes from A to B. So here we go. I'm going to say that 4 is my y1 and 6 is my y2. So that would make 2x1 and 10x2. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to use our formula right here to find the slope. 4 minus 6, because that's y1 minus y2, over x1, which is 2, minus x2, which is 10. Okay? So when I do that, I get 4 minus 6 is negative 2. Okay? And 2 minus 10 is negative 8. Then we reduce, and I get 1/4. Okay? So here's our slope. 1/4 is our slope. So we've got number 1, we've done it. We found the slope. Okay? Step 1, check. All right? Number 2, second thing we're going to do is we're going to plug in a point. Okay? So when you see plug in a point, you're probably thinking plug it into what? All right, well, when we write the equation of a line, we are going to use the slope-intercept form. Okay? And we should know this already. Slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b. Okay? Now, our y stands for the actual y value. Okay? Y is our y value. M is the letter that we use for slope. That is our rise over run, change in y over change in x. Our x represents our x value. And then b is our y-intercept. Okay. Remember, a y-intercept, okay, a y-intercept is wherever our line intersects the y-axis. So for instance, if we had this graph right here, and this dotted line is our line, that point right there is our y-intercept. Okay? Because that's where it crosses the y-axis. Okay, so let's go back up here. We're going to plug in a point to our slope-intercept form. All right, now we know something about our slope-intercept form already. We know that the slope is 1/4. So in place of m, I can put 1/4. Okay, I can put 1/4. So I know already that y equals 1/4 x plus b. Okay, so here's where plugging in the point's going to come in. I can pick either point. I can pick point A, or I can pick point B. It doesn't matter. Either one. In this case, I'm going to pick point A just because the numbers are smaller. Okay? And in place of y, I'm going to put my y value, which is 4. So I can say 4 equals 1/4. Okay? Now my x value is 2, so in place of x, I'm going to put 2. So 4 equals 1/4 times 2 plus b. Alright? Which leads us to the last thing we're going to do. Number 3 is we're going to solve for b. Alright, we got to find what b equals. So, 4 equals 1/4 times 2 plus b. Well, 1/4 times 2 is 2/4, which is 1/2. So we have 4 equals 1/2 plus b. So I need to subtract 1/2 from both sides. And then I get that b equals 3.5. Because 4 minus 1/2 would be 3.5. Right? So now we have our slope up here, and we have our y-intercept. Those are the only two things you need to write the equation of a line. Right? Because here's our slope, and here's our y-intercept. So our equation here for this line would be y equals 1/4 x, because 1/4 is our slope, plus 3 1/2, because 3 1/2 is our y-intercept. Okay? So that would be the equation of the line that goes through points A and B. Alright? Okay. So that's the first thing that we're going to learn how to do, or we just learned how to do. And the next few things are closely related. Right, next we're going to talk about how to write the equation of a parallel line. Right. Last section we talked all about parallel lines and perpendicular lines. Okay? And we said that parallel lines have the same slope. Okay? So let's say this would be an example of a question we would have here. Let's say we want to write the equation of the line parallel to y equals 2x plus 4 and goes through point P, which is at 2:10. Okay? This is one of your basic questions that will be on your homework, a quiz, and or a test. Right? It says write the equation of the line parallel to y equals 2x plus 4 and goes through point P, which is at 210. All right? So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to follow a lot, it's going to look a lot like these instructions. Okay? Just one little difference at the beginning. Okay? The first thing we're going to do is we're going to keep the same slope. All right? The reason we keep the same slope is because parallel lines have the same slopes. So in this case, our slope is 2. So we know that the slope for our line that we're looking for that goes through point P is going to start off by looking like this. Y equals 2x plus b, because they have to have the same slope if they're going to be parallel. Okay? Now, our second and third steps are going to be exactly the same as before. We're going to plug in a point, and then we've got to solve for b. All right? So we're going to plug in point. In this case, we only have one point to plug in, and that's point P. Right? So in place of y, I'm going to put 10, because that's our y value. And in place of x, I'm going to put 2, because that's our x value. Alright, so then, last step is to solve for b. So we would have 10 equals 4 plus b. We subtract 4 from both sides and we get 6 equals b. Alright? So we've got our slope here and we've got our y-intercept here. So our equation would be y equals 2x plus 6. Okay? Because that's our slope and that's our y-intercept. Alright? Okay, a couple more things. Next we're going to talk about how to write the equation of a perpendicular line. Okay, we're going to use this same example right here, except this time we're going to say perpendicular. Alright? And again, last section we talked about perpendicular lines for their slopes. We take the opposite reciprocal. Remember? So if the slope of one line is 2 over 3, then the slope of another line that's perpendicular to that is going to be opposite, which means it's going to be negative, and the reciprocal, which means we flip it. Alright? Alright? So, we're going to use this same example right here, except we're just going to find the line that's perpendicular. Our first step, which will be the only one that's different, is we are going to take the opposite reciprocal of the slope. Okay? We're going to take the opposite reciprocal of the slope. In this case, 2 is our slope, so the opposite reciprocal would be negative 1/2. So we know that our equation is going to start by looking like this. Y equals negative 1/2 x plus b. Because negative 1/2 would be the opposite reciprocal to 2. Alright? Then our next two steps are just like the previous. We're going to plug in a point. Right. In this case, we only have one point again. It's point P. So in place of y, I'm going to put 10. In place of x, I'm going to put 2. Okay? So we plugged in our point, 10 and 2. Finally, we're going to solve for b. All right. So we would get 10 equals negative 1 plus b. So we're going to add 1 to both sides, and then we get b is 11. Okay? So we have our slope, and we have our y-intercept. Those are the only two things we need to write our equation. So our equation for the line that is perpendicular to this equation and goes through point P would be y equals negative 1/2 x plus 11. All right? Okay, last thing. Last thing is that we always, not always, but most of the time we use slope-intercept form. But sometimes we're going to graph, and so we're going to learn how to graph a line in standard form. All right? How to graph a line in standard form. So in order to learn how we're going to do that, first thing we need to do is review what standard form is. All right? So standard form looks like this. We're going to say A times X plus B times Y equals C. All right? And A, B, and C are just numbers. All right? We call them constants. This should be a little bit of a review, by the way. Okay? And then here's your X value and your Y value. Okay? Now, to graph a line that is in standard form, we are going to have to find the x-intercept and y-intercept. Okay? If we look at a graph, like so, okay? Here's our y-axis and here's our x-axis. Everywhere on the x-axis, for instance, this point would be at 1, 0. Okay, this is 1, 0. 2, 3. This point is at 4, 0. Right? And this would be 2, 0, 3, 0, 4, 0, and so on and so on. The y value on the x-axis, everywhere on the x-axis, y equals 0. So to find the x-intercept, which means where our line crosses the x-axis, we are going to just say y equals 0, or plug 0 in for y. And that will give us the x-intercept. Okay? And for the y-intercept on our y-axis, x equals 0. So we're going to plug 0 in for x. All right? When we do this example, it might help a little bit, help you understand. So let's say that here's our equation that we want to graph. 2x plus 8y equals 16. Okay? In order to find the x-intercept, where our line is going to intercept the x-axis, okay, I'm going to plug 0 in for y. So basically what I can do is just cover that up. Because if I plug in 0 for y, that's going to be 0. So I can cover that up. So now I have 2x equals 16. Divide by 2, and we get x equals 8. So our x-intercept is 8. So on my graph, I'm going to go over to 8. 5, 6, 7, 8. And there's going to be a point right there, because that's where it intersects the x-axis. Alright? Now to find the y-intercept, okay, I'm going to plug in 0 for x. When I plug in 0 for x, 2 times 0 is just 0, so I'm going to cover it up. And then I get 8y equals 16. Divide by 8, and I get y equals 2. So my y-intercept is 2. How many points do you need to make a line? All you need are 2 points to make a line. And there it is right there. That's what our line would look like. The line 2x plus 8y equals 16 looks like that line right there. Okay? Alright, so we've gone over these 4 things. We talked about how to write the equation of a line. Okay? Find the slope, plug in a point, solve for b. Talked about how to write the equation of a parallel line. You keep the same slope because parallel lines have the same slopes. We talked about how to write the equation of a perpendicular line. You take the opposite reciprocal of the slopes, okay? Because that's what we talked about with perpendicular lines. And then we just talked about how to graph a line in standard form. All right? This was 3.5 and your homework is on RenWeb.